Welcome back to our show. This is the Burnout Prevention Talk Show, and my name is Casey Pacheco. I am your host, and I'm going to welcome my beautiful host, Dr. Nyempu Karmuhal. Tell me you don't want to dance. Tell me you don't want to
Burn
dance.
it down. I'm not burning.
So, we have a wonderful show in store for our guests today. Who do we have, Dr. Nyempu?
Oh my goodness, we have the lovely Rebecca, and you should meet her right on.
Absolutely. Welcome.
I'm so good to be with you guys. So exciting.
Oh, thank you for joining us today. We're here talking about burnout prevention. We are Nurses in Charge. Dr. Nyempu, she is the founder of Nurses in Charge, and we are here to talk about what we can do to prevent our nurses from burning out. But before we get into that, we want to know all about you, Rebecca. We welcome you to our show. If you don't, go ahead.
Just like you both, I've been a nurse now for, more time than I can think now, almost 15, 16 years at this point in time. But I'm a master's prepared nurse. But my life has been a little bit untraditional. I think that you guys know this, just like you, we're all carving our own path in nursing. And currently, I serve as the chief clinical officer of an organization called IntelliCare, which is my daytime job, which is a large workforce management or staffing agency in the post-acute space. But besides that, I really think that my spare time is spent advocating and activating in the nursing space. So I joke with my friends that I feel like I have no hobbies. I work in nursing, I dream about nursing, and all my hobbies are in nursing. So currently I sit as the president emeritus of an organization called SANCIEL, which was all about inspiring nurses to be innovators and entrepreneurs. But the next thing that I stepped into is I'm the co-chair, founder, and one of the commissioners of the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement, which is the fight to change the economic model around nursing, because with all the regards to what's going on in our workforce, it fundamentally is, if we can't get an economic model that will support nursing, I believe that our profession is at one of the biggest risks that we've ever been. And as we know, if there's no money around an item or a topic in this society, there is no value in it. And for far too long, nurses have been cost to our healthcare system. So that's what I do in my spare time. And I just love speaking to brilliant nurses who are going to start changing the world and amplifying our voices to be on the national and international level to actually own our profession in a way that most others have owned our profession on our behalf.
Rebecca, you answered all the questions in one. Girl, I went Trinidad, I'm like, she answered all the questions. So we can just wrap it up now. Oh, thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca, you're just so amazing. So amazing.
We are all, us, right? As nurses, we get a very brief chance to actually make our intros to people, right? So we just really get that 30-second intro down so that we can dive into the meat of other things. Yeah. So I know that you guys have done this, but I want to ask you guys a question too. Why did you start this channel? Like, what was so important to you that you actually wanted to host this and have these conversations? I'm just curious so that we can start here and then we can build from where we're going.
Let's have a real conversation. I love it. So this burnout prevention. So there are two things happening. I started the Burnout Prevention Network, where I realized so many nurses, as we were going out doing different things, whole coaching, consulting, we were becoming solopreneurs and running into the same problems that we did in the hospital, where we get burnt out because now you're running a business and there's so many moving factors. And they say, well, we're going to burn out and we're here. I want to help people feel good, but you're really burning out. So I just didn't think that was sustainable. And I'm like, in nurses, so many times, we have this paradigm that we eat our own. So we really need to stop and work together. Doctors, they consult to each other. They know they don't know it all. Why can't we do that? Why can't I say this is my specialty and I know, and I have Dr. Nyempu, I have, Crystal or, Carla on my network that I can send you to. So that was the Burnout Prevention Network. Dr. Nyempu.
Okay, well, the Nurses in Charge came about, I would say, years of being in the United States and having worked in the nursing field for 24 years, started as a nurse's aide, found that even my mother coming to the U.S. as a nurse could not connect with the system as a nurse. She came and really did start as a nurse's aide. So nurses in charge was brought about with this inquisitive mindset that what if a nurse knew some other country that he or she was going to, or just in the U.S. alone. Hey, I want to start nursing school. I want to enroll into nursing school, or I am in nursing school, but I just don't have connection with nurses that can, like push me and give me that nudging that I need. I experienced that. My mother experienced her isolation. And you name it, there are nurses all around the world that are doing remarkable things that we have no clue about. And sometimes we feel that we're doing the best here, but no, go abroad and into Liberia, you'd be amazed that without technology, as much as the US, they are doing remarkable breakthroughs. So nurses in charge is to bridge the gap. While a nurse's aide, I'm a LPN or RN or NP, we are one. And our knowledge in combination, we can break records. We can take care of patients like nothing else. So Nurses in Charge connects nurses globally. Nurses in Charge celebrate nurses' wins. Every level of achievement, we're there to make sure that nurse feels valued. Nurses in Charge also empowers, doing webinars, doing trainings. Like I said, globally, not only in the US. So that's a little bit about nurses in charge.
This is exactly why I love nurses, because the truth is you see a problem and we don't leave ours alone, right? We decide that we're actually going to take action and fix this. So congratulations, bravo to both of you guys, because I think there is such a strong need for both what you're doing, and I think it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we joined forces. So now the burnout prevention is it's a chapter under the Nurses in Charge. And our long-term goal, we see nurses burning out, and we see we can't really fill the nursing gap as fast as we would like. So our organization is actually working on a program right now. So as nurses come from different countries, they have a community to come into. We can support them. We can help them even before they come. And we actually have some nurses in our community that are nurse entrepreneurs in different countries. We are also running retreats. And when we do the retreats, we're going to be serving that country, working alongside those nurses, and really empowering the nurses. If they want to stay in their home country, they can, and there's so much they can do. And if they want to come to another country for a short time or to stay, they have a community they can do that.
I love it. All right. I have somebody after we get off of this, and I'm going to connect you guys with, but a nurse in Africa who is she built a hospital, and she's planning on building a nursing school, but I'm going to connect you guys with her as well. So this is brilliant. Because it is exactly what it is. I think honestly, this conversation that the world is going to need nurses, and that nursing to me has always been this pathway that can elevate, especially women, out of poverty and give them a career path to take them around the world. Prior to the pandemic, I was doing some work with Honduras because of the mass exodus. There was no development for women in his nation about how could you develop nursing schools within a country to elevate this population and give them hope and a path towards a better life. And I think that nursing has that potential. There was a book by Melinda Gates called The Moment of Lift. She wrote this book about when you invest in women, what happens to their home countries, where most men will leave their countries and never reinvest in that. What they found is traditionally when you invest in women from other nations, they take that money and they invest back in their communities from where they came from, elevating schools and infrastructure and communities in ways. And I believe nursing still, as what you guys are talking about, is the best path forward for millions of women around the world. And so I love what you're doing. And this is exactly the right time and for this kind of conversation to be going on, because there's a global shortage of nursing in the world, and this can be a wonderful way to solve it. So love this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for supporting women around the world. We could talk a little bit about where nursing is heading as a profession. You've been advocating for nurses for a long time. Where are we in the scale of critical versus where are we as nurses? Are we just talking? Because Dr. Nyampo, we're really fired up about burnout. Is this a real problem? Do you see it as a real problem?
So I think burnout is a symptom of a much larger problem, which is I think that nursing is in a state of crisis, unlike I've ever seen our profession before. I think the statistics are certainly showing that is we don't have a shortage of nurses necessarily in the United States or the globe, but we have a shortage of nurses due to the burnout of the environments, due to the environments that they're working at are burning them out so badly that they are not working in the environments that exist in healthcare today. So I would say in all my years of being a nurse, I've never seen our profession at such risk in the United States at scale. Now I'm seeing a very similar situation happening also in the United Kingdom, where half of the nurses went on strike within the NHS. And when I speak to nurses from all other parts of the world, their systems are even as bad as it is in the United States. Being a nurse in other parts of the world still have a lot to be desired. And still the US and Canada and other systems have the best in the world from a perspective. But I think if we're just talking about the United States specifically, the reality is that the pandemic was a global pandemic. Many nurses stayed at the bedside, pushed themselves forward. We saw a transition of the way that nursing was delivered and those that were rallying to it. But we also saw 100,000 nurses let their nursing license completely go. And the statistics are showing that since returning to the post-pandemic world, the rollbacks of the scope of practices, the freedoms and liberties that nurses have, many of them are leaving at higher levels. They're actually more dissatisfied with their nursing work, a job and career today than they were before. So I don't think that you're incorrect to say that nurses are burned out to a point. I think burnout sometimes run the risk that burnout becomes something that is our fault. We can't hack the situation. So we're burned out and it's our fault for being burned out. Go take a 3-day vacation and you should feel better. I think what nurses are actually dealing with is a topic called more moral injury, which is the stress of the environment, the death that they're seeing has actually caused internal moral injury, similar to post-traumatic stress disorder that you see in our veterans coming back from war. I think a lot of the nurses in their day-to-day life are suffering more at that level, at a point that they are leaving the profession because they are so broken that they recognize they have to save themselves because they can no longer save patients. And I think that's where we're sitting right now for our profession.
Dr. Nyampo, you always say that. That's your word, right? Moral injury.
Moral injury. And burnout is just such a complex subject to even just put moral injury on it. And moral injury in itself is just, it surrounds the topic of burnout, but then in the core of it, we have this broken healer. Imagine a healer that's broken. How worse can we go? You know, so that is the state of nursing right now. The healer is injured.
Yes.
So that's the problem we're having right now.
So I want to know about this commission for nurse reimbursement. It's the hot topic now on LinkedIn.
I'm glad that you want to say so, Casey. So I think that, and the reality is what we realized is, and maybe you guys don't know this, but I have to step you back in history and tell you what happened. So over 100 years ago in the United States, there was this thing called the women's suffrage movement. And in the early 1900s, women had been fighting for the right to vote in the United States for over 60 years. And they organized a march in 1913, the day before Woodrow Wilson's inauguration, to draw attention to this issue. And at that march was the first time that nurses organized and got involved in the women's suffrage movement. So at that time, it took another 7 years for nurses and women, specifically in the United States, to get the right to vote in 1920s. But what happened in the 1920s is when women received the right to vote in the 1920s, nursing became the largest economic vehicle for women's financial independence in the history of the United States. Now, why this happened was at that time, I don't know if you guys know this, but at that time, nurses all ran their own independent practices. Physicians did the same thing. They all went to a patient's homes, patients' families paid the private duty care, and that is what was happening. Now, at that time, hospitals were this place of deplorable conditions. Nobody wanted to be there, only the destitute. But surgery started to get better. And as surgery got better, families started to hire private duty nurses to come in and care for patients. As they started to enter the hospitals started to recognize care got better. So they started to employ nurses in hospitals. Now, in the 1920s, if you look back, all of the bills from the 1920s hospital systems in the United States actually have a line that breaks out nursing services, and their charge is put right on the bill. Now, as you know, at the time, nurses were women. Men ran hospitals. Men were physicians. And they started to feel threatened by nurses to their economic model. Women had too much knowledge about the value that they brought to hospital systems because they clearly charged for it. So based on the expert Donna Deers, they said they started to develop new models and they wanted to keep nurses as far away from the money as possible. So in the 1930s, when large-scale insurance came together, what they did is they looked for a model that would capture nurses into hospitals, but not give them clear financial visibility into the impact or the amount of money that nurses actually raise for hospitals. So they turned to hotels. They saw that maids were rolled into room rates, and they rolled nurses into the room rates at that point in time, forever hiding the value of nurses in hospital systems. And which that model did was place nurses squarely as a cost to hospital systems, as opposed to a reimbursable service, which every other single healthcare provider in the country has today. So for 100 years, nursing has remained a cost, whereas OT, PT, MRI techs, respiratory therapists, kitchen services, dietary services, all of those have a reimbursement model. And why we in this country constantly have a problem when we say we need more nurses, and the hospital says we have no more money for nurses, but you're like, well, you just hired all these occupational therapists. You're building a new building. And they say we have plenty of money for that because those are reimbursable services. We're not ever going to be able to align this. So the truth is the commission is about taking nurses out of the reimbursement model, creating a reimbursement model that allows nurses to charge for their services so that we can create a sustainable model that more nurses may equal more cost, but actually generate revenue. And by doing such, we will realign the misalignment that has currently existed around staffing nurses in this country, which is when we've always needed more, we're always told there is no money for more. So I think you guys are businesswomen, you understand this. If nobody's willing to pay you, nobody's willing to pay for your service, you don't have a business. And that's what happened in nursing. They have constantly de-invested in us, not invested in us because we are a cost. And it is time that we get nurses off of being a cost in healthcare. And that is what is the focus of the commission.
I have seen that even as an independent nurse going out there, people, even though they know they need you, they just don't see why they have to pay for your services. You pay for everything else, but you won't pay for the nurse.
Yes. And that's exactly it.
You have to know the history.
And I on that note, as Rebecca mentioned, going back with the history of nursing movement with the labor reforms and everything, even the nurses, nurse practitioners today are also going through that, where they need to be reimbursed by, according to our services being provided. And so the higher we go, I would say higher we go in education, we start to become so aware of this imbalance that's happening. And now the advanced practice nurses are actually on that battlefront saying, we cannot provide care that doctors are providing, and even spending more time. So we still do spend more time with patients, educating patients as compared to our
physician colleagues.
Okay.
Yes,
so,
and you're absolutely equal pay for equal work, right? Nurse practitioners are paid 70 cents on the dollar for what their physician colleagues do for the exact same billing code. The scope of the work is actually identical. And you're absolutely right. Nurse practitioners are fighting this. There's large resistance against it. However, there was a recent bill that was just put out in Congress, $100 million to invest in specifically advancing nurse practitioner workforce in this country, which is a remarkable turn. Because to your point, as you're saying, Dr. Nyampo, the reality is that we, to do our work, should be paid equal work for equal pay is a big argument in this country. And the arguments that exist to oppose that are only meant, in my mind, at this point in time, to try to keep nurses down as a profession, which has happened for the last 100 years. They have basically disempowered us, saying that our skills are not valuable to the workforce, even when we deliver all of the deliverables as required to keep a patient alive and drive better patient outcomes, because we have never been able to create an economic model that actually values us equal and allows us to be not only measured by a similar kind of skill set that allows us to deliver outcomes, but we've never been able to be paid equally so that we can establish models that will better and further develop access to care within this country. So completely agree with you. And I do believe that our nurse practitioners are making. I was an NP for over a decade, and was part of the reason that I gave up that fight was because I was like, the battle when it comes to money over nurse practitioners. The reason that it is opposed because it comes down to money. It doesn't come down to access or what's best for patients or what's best for healthcare in this country. It's coming down to the mighty dollar. And this is what we as nurses were never taught about, that healthcare is a business. And people told us that we should be doing this because we care about people. And as long as we care about people, it doesn't matter if you get paid because you get to do good work. Now, the reality is, yeah, we care about people, but this job is hard. And why people aren't staying in it. And we're just treating nurses as a commodity. And because we treat them as a commodity, they're not going to stay. And what I strongly wonder is, what is the world going to be if we do not have nurses? Where will society be if we stop caring for the sick and the infirmed?
Hold up, Rebecca. I have an Instagram video from maybe a week ago, and I said the nurses are taking a day off. They're not showing up to the hospital today, so please do not show up at the ED because you'll find a police officer, someone in registration, respiratory therapist, but the nurses are not showing up to work today, so please do not.
Was there a national walkout? Was there a national walkout that I missed?
she was giving a real life scenario of what it would look like if
I see exactly. Honestly, I think that's exactly. I wonder if we've reached this tipping point, which is, are we at the point where we actually have to start arguing in favor of this? That change does not happen when you maintain the status quo. You ladies know this more from history than probably the vast majority because you're well educated, you study history. Change never comes easy. Right? You have to risk something. And that means doing things that we as nurses don't like to do, which is do exactly what you say. Don't show up at work. Go out and march. Strike. Take this to a larger issue. And I know that's not popular.
Rebecca, you know what someone would say? Hey, Nyampu, you can say that because you're self-employed. You left the bedside, left your office job, and now you have answer to no one. You can say that. Casey can do the same, but I cannot do that. Just that fear of leaving. We talked about that on another segment. It's hard to pull nurses away from this slave mentality, I would call it. We were brought up to care and not show the compensation component of the care we're providing. Just go to nursing school, go to clinical, care for the patient, go back home, you'll be paid. We have no clue what the IV drip costs. None of that. We have no clue the gauze, even the alcohol wipes. Sometimes we misuse them because we have no clue. Or sometimes, if we knew, if we were trained from nursing schools, the compensation model, we would be well informed. There's moral injury that my employer does not care about my feeling. They don't care about your feeling. It's a business. It is a business. It's money. Unless you are doing the you are just a number, and the hospital is after the revenue. That's why CEOs can fire nurses like that, because you're just a number. You come here just to take care of lives and bring your feelings to work. Don't care. Don't worry about the revenue. I worry about that, and that's it. So at the end of the day, if I can pull 2 nurses to take care of 200 patients, you just go and do it. At the end of the day, I get my bonuses and you go home with your burnout.
That's right. And you could potentially lose your license. You could be charged if you made a mistake. That's exactly it. So, and the best way that the best way John Welton explained this to me is you have $1, and out of every dollar that's spent in healthcare, 25 cents of that dollar is supposed to go to nursing. But since everything that's bundled into that dollar, if they're going to cut costs because they need to do it, nursing is the place that they go. So instead of spending 25 cents on nursing, they spent 21 cents on nursing. So that, to your point, they're increasing the ratios, and they're still maintaining their bonuses. They're still maintaining everything, the new buildings and the metrics that they want to obtain. But it's the nurse who carries all of the responsibility, but none of the opportunity to drive those changes. And I think that's, to your point, is why we're leaving. We're leaving because we love this profession, but we don't love it more than the safety of our families and the safety and protection of our freedom. And that's after the Rajan Devat trial, where she was criminally prosecuted for a self-reported medical error based on failing systems and a new floor. The reality is, I think the collective psyche of nursing said, it could have been us. And no matter how much I love this job, it's not enough to risk my family, my freedom to do nursing any longer.
It's true. It's true. And I've walked out, they threatened me, but I said, I'm not showing up 7 post-surgical patients. That's my license. This is just a job, but you do see yourself. You see yourself in these cases. But Rebecca,
you did walk out. You did walk off a shift.
I didn't show up. I called out. And they say, you can't keep doing that. I'm not intimidated by people, though. I don't get intimidated. No. I am driven by love, not fear.
Yes, and that's what it's going to take for nurses to do these, because this fear, we'll have another meeting on this, but we should unpack the fear that nurses have, which all of us have, is belief in betting on ourselves and saying, I'm going to do what's best and right for me, instead of staying in an environment that's making me sick, ill, and unable to operate in a way that makes me live my best life. So anyway.
Absolutely. So what's your advice that you will give to nurses, nurse leaders, faculty out there, support staff who are burning out? What would you tell them, Rebecca?
We're going to have many, many jobs in our life, but we're only going to have one life. And I think that speaks to the conversation of fear that we have. And so if you're going to live one life, define it for yourself and define it for what is important to you and your family. And if you are, and I've always said this to people who call me that are burned out and miserable and exhausted and broken. And I said, I believe that the universe is giving you signs that you've ignored up to this date, that they have bigger plans for you. And so my advice to you is this: if you're miserable, the universe is saying, don't stay where you are, jump. And I've been in those situations, and every time I've jumped, I've only gone higher. And my guess is Casey and Dr. Nyapi would tell you the exact same thing, because the reality is that we only have one life. And when we choose not to live it, we give up on our dreams and our passion and what makes us who we are. So what I would say to you is get out there, carpe diem, seize the day. Don't let fear drive your decisions. And if you are unhappy, the truth is there's only one person who can change that, and that's you. So either stay and take on the issues head on and confront them, or don't, and go and chase what makes you, you.
Beautiful. You should write a book.
It's so funny because this is so hard, right? Like, we know that this is hard. And what you guys have done is extraordinary. And you're examples of the best that can happen when you start doing these things. And I believe that it takes time and success and everything to make these things matter. And you guys are there. So thank you so much for having me with you guys, though, today.
Absolutely. We have one last question for you. You're in leadership, you're in advocacy, you are sit on many boards of many different kinds. You are a COO of an extremely successful company. You have 3 kids, a husband, and probably a dog. How do you not burn out?
I would not say I do anything all that. So what I can tell you all is that you have to experience and give yourself grace that you're not going to do everything well at every single day, right? And that you have to recognize where you succeed and give yourself that moment to sit there and say, I'm going to be either a great mom today or I'm going to be great at my job today. It's very hard to do both things well at that day because you only have so many hours in the day. So I think how do you do it all? I realize the best people I've ever worked with are the busiest people I work with, because when they say yes, they follow through. So the things that I looked at in my life is when I say yes, I'm going to carve out time to make it happen. And the things that I've said no to are because simply I know that I can't give my full energy. So I do things that inspire my soul. I do the things that make you happy. And when I say yes to something, it's because I know that what I'm going to gain from that experience is going to help me grow in an experience that I would otherwise not have had. So that's what I would say to people is if you're burned out and you're miserable all the time, then you're spending time doing the wrong thing. Because you can be busy every single day. And if you're doing what you love, it's not work. It's magic.
It's true. It's true.
So true. What a juicy conversation.
I
Thank
tell
you
you.
for joining us. This was wonderful. I thank you so much, Dr. Nyampu, as I always do. Do you have any last things to ask or say for Rebecca before we end up our call today?
Rebecca is just so natural. She just come very organic, put it out there, no drawback. Thank you so much. You are a beautiful human, and you just told us from your heart what we should be doing in our daily lives, being just that one person, many jobs out there. Thank you so much. You're highly appreciated.
Dr. Amber, you're highly appreciated. Thank you for having me. And Casey,
Thank
your energy, both of you guys are lights in a darker space around nursing, but know that the light will always beat back the darkness. So keep going. It may not happen today or tomorrow, the success that you want today, but it will happen if you keep on that path.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming here. And thank you for viewers who are tuning in. Thank you for listening, taking some of your time. If you have any questions or anything that you want to see discussed, anything that you want to get off your chest, please feel free. Leave it in the comments. If it's personal, you could message us personally. But I thank you, nurses out there. Keep going. Thank you, ladies. I have a nice ending. So hold up.